Yo,
Hello.
I can barely hear you. A
Can you hear me better now?
little bit.
Hmm. Can you hear me now or not really?
I can hear you. It's just a little low. Sounds a little hollow on my end.
Sorry, I don't. You're having to use. My microphone doesn't go into the computer. I have to. It hasn't for several months, maybe even a year. I just haven't replaced any cords, so I always use the internal mic for YouTube and you. But my daughter ran the laptop dead until now I'm at 30%. I don't know if that matters or not, but if you can understand me, then it
No,
won't
you're
affect
fine.
the show.
No, it sounds normal now.
Not good. Making sure. Okay. So I got Woman King, God's Country, Pearl, See How They Run, Clerks 3, Confess, Fletch, and Singles 92.
Yeah.
Work. Perfect. And I'm not on next week's show, so if you want to know how I think of Blonde, we can hold it for another week. Unless you want whoever you're going to have on, you can have their opinion. I don't really care one way or the other.
Fair enough.
I mean, if it'll make for a good show, we can definitely table it. Is there any shot I'll like it, or are you just?
I have no
really
idea.
Not sure. Yeah.
I really don't know. I think the way you reacted to the documentary is pretty much the way you'd react to this.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, I'm a little worried about Don't Worry, Darling. It looks good, but the more I hear about it, and the fact that Florence Pugh won't do any press, I don't know. Anyway, I can talk about that later. Anything before we get going?
Oh, I had some good Twitter interactions I can mention.
All right. Perfect. Are you ready then?
Yeah.
Welcome to the Welcome to the Everyone's a Critic movie review podcast. I got flubbed up because we'll get to it later on in the show. Let me start over. Welcome to the Everyone's a Critic movie review podcast. Fuck you, Kevin Smith.
I mean, it's only been a decade. It's fine.
Well, we had a different name.
True.
However, it's been several years. But I've never heard it in a movie before.
Yeah.
Anyway, welcome to the show. Visit us at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. My handle is CriticsPod. Visit us at IHateCritics.net. Everyone's a critic podcast.com. We are on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Alexa, all your podcatchers. Listen to us on YouTube. We're also live generally Monday evenings between 6 and 9 Central Time, depending on our schedules. We do post that on our social media. You could also click on the bell somewhere on this video to get notifications. Subscribe to the show here as well, and you'll get notifications of when we go live. Patreon.com/CriticsPod is the best way to support the podcast. And then our TeePublic link, if you head over to IHateCritics.net, click on the upper right-hand corner of the TeePublic link. And if you go back to Apple Podcasts, if you leave a 5-star review and a rating, we'll read the review on the air. You got to let us know you sent it, though, because we don't see all of them, especially internationally. And we will also send you a Blu-ray given to Sean by some of the distributors of the films that are out there right now. But before we get going, you had some fun Twitter interactions this week.
Yeah, and nothing. I'm not even being like sarcastic about that. Like, it was just really awesome. So I had a chance to review a movie that was co-directed by Sean Baker, the director of the Florida Project that he did back in 2004, called Takeout. And I posted that on social media and on Twitter, and Sean Baker retweeted it and quoted it, and it was really awesome. And it got a huge amount of hits for something that I thought was going to get 0 hits. So that was really very cool. It was very awesome. I mean, he did it twice. The 2 times that I tweeted it, he's put it out there, which is awesome. I couldn't be a cooler guy. And then another one, the Film Foundation, which I was just talking about last week, they quoted my review of Sambazanga that I posted this week and put that out as a tweet. And that was, again, just another great interaction. Again, for another review that I really thought would get no traction whatsoever. Who's going to read, a 1972 movie from Africa review? Those just tend to. I'm not knocking it. It tends not to do very well, even if I enjoy writing about it. And then this week, I wrote about Moon Age Daydream and interviewed the director Brett Morgan. You can find that interview on our Facebook page right now. And he retweeted that for me, and that was really awesome. I've had a good week of interactions with people on YouTube or Twitter for some reason.
It is funny the way you word it too, is that movies that don't necessarily get a lot of clicks when you do a review on them. My wife and I were having an interaction this week and trying to debate whether she wanted to see Pearl with me or not. And she was like, your show doesn't even know shit about Hocus Pocus, so why would I want to go see? What kind of audience do you have? I'm like, the audience that doesn't care about Hocus Pocus.
Wow.
So we definitely have our own little niche, but it is cool when someone with a bigger pull, shares stuff and allows certain things to get a little more traction. That's awesome.
Is Hocus Pocus out? I think
the second one's coming out or something like that.
It's coming out. I didn't know if it was out or not.
We'll never know.
Your wife doesn't want to come on the show and talk about it? It's a cult classic. People love that movie for whatever goddamn reason.
Or it's too big to be a cult classic.
It's not a legitimate classic.
No. It's just like I don't know. I was about to say a MILF classic. That's not what I meant. It's just kind of a middle-aged. I don't even know what it is. It's too big to be a cult classic. It's just not good.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I've never seen it. I don't know. Maybe it's great. I'll never see it. It doesn't matter. But
I found it to be wildly mediocre, but that's just me.
I'm sure that's a lot of our audience too. All right, let's get to our show. I haven't opened up my pictures yet. Okay, let's share the screen. And we will start with the Woman King. I am absolutely fascinated to see how good or bad this movie is.
This is weirdly fascinating. There was a weird sort of backlash on this movie, and I guess because apparently the screenwriters may or may not have taken some liberties with the story, hiding the fact that the characters in the Woman King, who are essentially the good characters, were also in the slave trade, even though that is technically a plot point in this movie. They do use that, but this was also a movie about Black characters, specifically African characters, that was written by a white woman, and the story was by a white woman, and so people were kind of bothered by that, which I understand. That said, putting that aside and just investing in Viola Davis, this movie is pretty awesome. Viola Davis is the title character, the eventual Woman King. She's going to ascend to being what they call the Woman King, which is not the wife of the king, but sort of a co-king, if you will, somebody who sits by the side of the king, but is not his wife, essentially. She is the leader of this group of warriors who are all female, and they're the defenders of this particular kingdom. And the action scenes are spectacular. Like just right off the bat, one of the first things you see is just this massive bloody battle that is just awesome. And Viola Davis is absolutely killing it. And every one of her warriors is just a total badass. And you really just get dragged right into the story. And then, there's a really typical idea of here bringing in a sort of a point of view character who is this character who's brought in as a slave and is given the option to either die alone or you can try to train to become a warrior. Those are your options. Like they'll just put you out and you can just go die, or you can try to be a warrior. So she takes the warrior option, and she turns out to be a very good warrior. And her journey is, of course, the journey that we're following, because that's the point of view character. And it's a very good point of view character. This young actress is really amazing, and she has a lot of surprises in store. And she starts off very willful and remains very willful throughout, defiant, even willing to try and make changes to what Viola Davis's character is leading, which gives her a challenge that's very interesting. There's also a unique sort of connection between the two of them that the movie really layers in well, that in a bad movie might stand out a lot, but in a good movie, it works because they found a way to make it work. Other movies might consider it too much of a coincidence. I just really thought it was clever. Because Viola Davis sells every aspect of this. She's just one of the best actors working. She gets several monologues in this movie, one of which is just her readying her warriors to go into battle. And I just wanted to crawl through the screen and just go right into war with her. Like she's just that much of a leader, and like just that compelling. Like you just want to follow her anywhere. She's just wildly charismatic and hardcore, and she just doesn't waste any time. There's no wasted motion. At the same time, it doesn't take away from the building of these characters. They give them enough, each of them, the main ones, enough development for you to invest in them. Like I said, there are some predictable elements. Like there's one character, like you can just look at them in the way that they're built. Like that character is going to die. That character is built to be the one that dies. That is very dramatic. But I cared when she died. So like it worked. I like this movie. I think it's a very good movie.
Yeah, I get from the trailer. I haven't seen it. But from the trailer, my thought was, is this too, I mean, it's Viola Davis, so automatically got a fantastic actress. It's a true story, so being an over-the-top action movie, the way it appears, almost Marvel-esque, big, is that the right way to make this movie, or do you go for more of a dramatic, period piece that's more taking itself seriously? Now, obviously, and you can do that with an action movie too. I'm not trying to take anything away. I haven't seen the movie. That's just based on the trailer, which is why I was wondering if it's any good or not. It is more action movie than it is anything else, correct?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say, I mean, most of it is based, like it says, based on true events. The idea here is that they're a small kingdom. They're going up against this much larger kingdom that has gotten large by selling the people that they conquer into slavery, which the kingdom run by John Boyega, who's the king, and to the warrior played by Viola Davis. He also is in the slave trade, but she's encouraging him to get out of it and to stop selling their people to advance, their stature. And so that's a plot point that's going on through here, even though a lot of people were saying, like, you're denying this, that they were involved in the slave trade, and these were not, as much as this, warrior tribe is interesting. They were slavers as much as anybody else. I don't know the truth. I can't say. I can't say what was true and what wasn't about that, other than they do acknowledge that. Whether they ever did get out of the slave trade, I don't know. Maybe they didn't. And that could certainly taint aspects of this movie, but purely based on Viola Davis's performance and the performance of the young girl who plays the point of view character, and just the action in general is just so good that I can't deny just how much of a good time I had watching this movie. It was really entertaining and exciting and violent and watchable.
Yeah, and I don't know how it did, but it is kind of cool. I feel like this year we're getting more original blockbusters versus, we're getting the IP ones as well, but it does feel like we're getting different movies that are making an attempt at making money on their own versus coming from an existing property.
Surprisingly enough, this was the number one movie at the box office. It took in $19 million, which isn't necessarily blockbuster numbers, but 74, 75 million on the multiple would be pretty good for this. Maybe 100 million worldwide. They're gonna, they should make money off of this and be happy with the result.
That's awesome. All right, let's move on to God's Country.
God's Country stars Thandiwe Newton as a college professor in Montana. She's just moved there with her mother, who's very ill, and she doesn't get out much, but she has this piece of land that is hers. And one day she catches these two guys hunting on her land, and she politely asks them to not do that, which they reject. And this begins sort of a standoff. And what we come to find is that there isn't much help for her here, even as there is a not terrible member of law enforcement. He is the only member of law enforcement for about 450 miles. He's a state trooper, and his the entirety of Montana, because there's such a small population, that's his jurisdiction. His other cop that he had is currently on suspension for doing something awful. So she's kind of caught in the middle of this whole awful situation. She also stumbles on this thing at work where the guy who is the head of her department may or may not have committed not a sexual assault, but a sexual harassment, I guess, against one of the students. So she's trying to deal with that. She's also trying to deal with a bit of racism on the staff, amongst the racism that's going on at home. And this is actually kind of a Western in a way, the way it plays out, like a modern day Western. And it's really exceptionally directed. The director is Julian Higgins, and he does an amazing job of building layer upon layer upon layer of this story, between this conflict between her and these two guys who are hunting on her land and begin to threaten her when she tries to stop them. And she's perfectly justified in what she's doing. At the same time, she's got no backup to protect her from what's coming. She's also a former cop. She was in New Orleans during the time of Katrina, and she's got a lot of baggage from that. Like I said, her mother is with her, and her mother is very ill, perhaps dying, and that's weighing on her. So there's a lot of things at play here, and it's amazing how well Thandiwe Newton brings all of this together. And the movie doesn't feel overburdened. It doesn't feel overstuffed with all that stuff, even as there are, like I said, even allusions to Katrina and police violence. It still feels like it's telling this story and staying focused on this story and what's happening with her and these two guys. And the college story also plays into that. The one police officer in town, plays into that. She doesn't have a love interest, which I found interesting. She's basically entirely on her own in this movie, which certainly stacks the odds in a very unique way. But the film is exceptionally directed. It's, like I said, another one that's just incredibly watchable. It's got some good action to it, a lot of surprises. It's really just a fantastic movie. And Thandiwe Newton is just so incredibly underrated.
Yeah, I had seen the name of this movie, but I didn't know what it was until you started talking about it. I'm very excited to see this. This sounds very right up my alley. One, I mean, Montana is just a fun place to. I mean, you go outside and with the shitty camera, and you get an amazing shot. So you get someone with some skills plus some actors, and you're out in that environment. That just sounds awesome.
Yeah, the energy between Thandiwe Newton and these two guys who are hunting on her land. One of them's kind of this conflicted, not a nice guy, but certainly like a guy who doesn't want to be a complete dick. And then this other guy that is just pure dick energy, just constantly like that constant bubbling under rage that's just boiling to come out at any moment, just eager to come out, like that energy, and that her just not backing down. Like she's not going to be pushed over. She's not a bitch, but she's not good. You're not going to push her and make her do something she doesn't want. She fights back. But not in like a badass way, like in the way like a person in her situation would. She tries to go to the
real life way.
Yeah, it's very believable the way she approaches it, until she has to go to another extreme. And then when that extreme arrives, that's good stuff. It's good stuff.
I'm definitely sick on this one. When does it's in theaters now, right?
Yeah, it's in theaters now.
Can't wait to that stream. But I'm gonna have to, unfortunately. All right, up next is Pearl.
Pearl. Pearl. Of course, this is the origin story from X, the prequel to X, which is already, one of the best horror movies of the year. And now we've got a an even better horror movie from the same director in the same year, which is pretty amazing. Mia Goth is Pearl. She is a young teenager who wants to be a movie star. She's in the 1920s, 30s, the era where just movies are just coming to be. And she wants to be a movie star. She will do anything to get what she wants. Meanwhile, at home, her mother is this very German, very strict woman who feels like her daughter should suffer as much as she does because she has a roof over her head. And her dad is paralyzed from the Spanish flu, so he can't move. And I love the set piece early on that kind of demonstrates just how off Pearl is, just kind of like just this little touch to give you kind of how Pearl is disturbed, where she almost dumps her dad in the lake where a crocodile lives, just very close to doing it before mom stops it. And then you've got the just immediately after that, they go into a scene where she's giving dad a bath and then she's taking a bath in front of him. And it's very creepy. It's very creepy and very well played. And it's just sort of layering in what's coming down the road in this movie, which is, of course, her beginning to unravel in the movie, becoming incredibly surprising and violent and scary and awesome. But this movie, from moment one to moment last, the brilliant way that Ty West uses the old MGM musicals and the old MGM adventures and serials from the 30s and 40s is it's just such a brilliant meta joke. I mean, it truly is just this wonderful joke that if you're aware of those movies, like even if you've just seen The Wizard of Oz, you're gonna find that like the font that he uses in the credits is like the perfect font from like 1930s MGM movies, and then the score sounds like it could have come from an MGM film in the 30s or the 40s. Like it's just the strings are just so beautiful and so perfect and so against the story that's being told. And the ironic distance between the music and the presentation is just absolutely brilliant. And then Mia Goth. I mean, in my review, I was writing about her today, having both like the sensitive beauty of like a oh God, what's her name now? I forgot her name. Shelley Duvall, and like the ferocity of Faye Dunaway, like in one package. Like that's such an amazing package. She's got that in this movie. Because when she turns ferocious, it is very much like wire hanger energy. Like and yeah, just that sweetness in her eyes and the innocence, like she doesn't even really realize the magnitude of the things that she wants to do. It's a fascinating performance, and there is I believe it's an 8 to 10 minute sequence of this movie that is just the camera looking up at Mia Goth as she's giving this monologue, and it is breathtaking. It is Academy Award level good. She's not going to get nominated because Hollywood is full of shit and doesn't award the best performance every year. But it is the best performance by an actor in a movie this year, bar none.
Far and away.
It blows everything out of the. It's so amazing. Just that sequence alone. You can do that, and the Scarecrow sequence in this movie are just two of the best sequences in any movie this year. Man, wow, blows my mind. Blows my mind how amazing she is in that moment. And yeah, I adore this film.
Just the fact that it exists is so weird. One, I don't think you're going to see this unless you saw X. So already, not that you'd need to see X to see this movie. You don't. No. It does make the two together really great. You think them together, but so you're only really going to grab from that audience. It wasn't a huge audience to begin with, but it still exists and it still came out in theaters, which I just think is awesome. I'm glad they did that. Everything you said is so pitch perfect, right on. I mean, it's basically like if the Wizard of Oz if Dorothy was a serial killer. And it is just so good, so watchable, so it's just smart. I didn't realize how much I liked Ty West until this year. You know, I'd seen stuff and I liked him okay, but
Mhm.
these two movies are two of the best of the year. Obviously, some A24. I mean, this is going to be one of A24's best movies of all time.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question. They've got my favorite movie of all time and this one just this year alone. Like that's crazy. And X on top of it. Like that's amazing. What are you that's bad. I mean, that's one of the best A24 years ever. And it's A24 we're talking about.
Well, I mean, at least 3 times they've had movies that we've put in our top 5, you know, of all time, top
Yeah.
5, you know. So it is insane what they do. And just, I don't know. I can't say enough about Mia Goth. I don't even know what, I mean, like just the scarecrow scene is just so good. Multiple scenes in the bathtub where she's just like touching her father and like seeing if he feels pain and just her curiosity.
Mhm.
And you mentioned something early on where she does take the bath in front of her father, but it's not like a lesser horror director would just go for the creep factor and just, you know, lean into it. He's unraveling, like you said, her level of crazy, and he does such a good job of taking his time with that.
There's no nudity. There's no nudity in this movie. I mean, but there are 2 bath scenes, but there's no nudity in the film.
Unlike X, where everybody's naked.
Yeah. And I point that out only because, like it says, it adds something to those bath scenes where it's just it's more transgressive because it's not intentionally like sexual on her part, or she's not being sexualized and she's not sexualizing him. She's taunting him in a way, making him as uncomfortable as she can possibly make him without actually physically harming him. She's inflicting emotional damage, which just makes her that much scarier.
Right. Every person she interacts with, watching them go the gamut of emotions from, pleasure being around her till hopefully when she kills them. Spoiler alert, she's a serial killer. That level of, I mean, you go there with the characters and you don't know what to say. You just know you're scared of her.
Mm-hmm.
And it is just so good. That 8 to 10 minute scene, it wasn't until like 6 minutes and I'm like, holy, have they even cut?
No.
And movies just don't do this anymore. It doesn't get much better than that.
Mm-hmm.
It's to the point where I don't even care what awards they do. There's so many great movies this year that we should just talk about all of them and how fantastic they are. But I hope that I start seeing Mia Goth more. Kind of like the way when we saw the year of Florence Pugh when she came out with that wrestling movie in the midsummer, and was it Four Women or whatever it was?
Little Women, yeah.
Little Women. That was a fantastic year for anybody, but that was kind of her groundbreaking year. And then since then, she's this massive star. I would love to see that with Mia Goth because it does not get better than what she did. So I would love
it's so incredible. And you know what else is great is that Ty West's direction in that scene. First of all, choosing not to cut, but also the way he starts the scene with that lovely young woman just trying to be nice to this girl and just trying to draw her out and give her a moment to speak, like she can sense there's something wrong. She has no idea what it is. And then the sinking dread of going from this woman was going to be able to walk away from this interaction seemingly, and the sinking dread as she gets further and further into that maniac monologue, and she's not getting like super angry, but you can sense like the bile rising in her throat as she's talking, and then that sinking dread that like, oh shit, it's gone. And she does it like there's a rise and fall multiple times where it's like she's gonna kill her, she's gonna let her go, she's gonna kill her, she's gonna let her go. It's so great and it's so suspenseful, it's breathtaking.
With just fun shots.
The credits.
Grab. Oh yeah,
the credits. I mean, oh my God!
Might as well have been an 8-minute monologue without words.
What a choice! I mean, my God! Wow, fantastic.
Yeah, I can't even we did go see it, my wife and I, and she had totally forgotten about X, which I'm like, how She's like, well, it wasn't memorable. I'm like, bullshit. No. And she liked this better than X as well. To me, it's just like one movie as far as I'm concerned. I don't even want to compare the two. I think you're right. This is probably better, but as a package, I just, it makes the ending even more fascinating because, or not even the ending, but just her scenario with her husband because of X. It's just like, how did you even get there?
Yeah.
Which now I just want to see the next 70 years of their lives. I would watch.
I believe he's making one that's set in the 90s now, with taking the Mia Goth character from X and moving that into the 90s.
I am on board. Whatever he wants to do with this world, I will follow him the entire way.
Mm-hmm. It's Ari Aster levels of good at this point.
Yeah, which is, we mentioned that, but didn't quite give him that credit after X, but now it's just like, okay, you're that brilliant. I'll give you that.
That one, he made his Hereditary, and now he's made his Midsommar.
I mean, that's fair. In the same year, no less.
I still prefer those two movies overall, but yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean but these are, they're just so original.
Yeah,
and just so smart and
funny, like darkly funny. Like just the score alone, just the meta of the MGM musical and the nods to Wizard of Oz. Just the meta is just darkly hilarious.
And just how committed everybody in this movie is to that.
So good, and it's really awesome. It's such a great movie, and I wish more people had seen it. It didn't do great. It did about 3 million over the weekend,
which I would hope they would have known that going in. I don't know why. I mean, again, you're grabbing from that X audience, which wasn't a huge audience to begin with.
Yeah,
and you're probably only going to get a fraction of those people. So anyway, go see Pearl if you haven't already.
Mm-hmm.
See How They Run.
See How They Run is a sort of a loose adaptation of a sort of Agatha Christie idea. Or rather, I guess it's more of a, like to steal a phrase, a meta take on an Agatha Christie novel. So the idea here is that a play of a Agatha Christie play, Three Blind Mice, is being put on, and one of the people who was attending the 100th performance of that play is murdered, and his body is left on stage. They call in Sam Rockwell, and he is the detective. Saoirse Ronan happens to be the first cop on the scene, and she ends up getting assigned to be his partner, and they investigate the murder, and there are numerous suspects. So Adrian Brody is the murder subject. He was killed, and they're working backwards from his body to try and figure out which of the people, either a cast member or somebody behind the scenes, who may have murdered him. And it's a murder mystery comedy, and it is a rather brilliant murder mystery comedy. The absolute the ways in which that Sam Rockwell and Saoirse Ronan have just completely different energy is, it's not antagonistic. It's just sort of like he's very sleepy and bored, and she's very happy to be there and excited and taking notes on everything that may not even take notes on. And she's accusing everybody of murder while he's kind of pulling her back, going, it's not everybody's guilty of this. Like, it's a great plays into this sort of running gag throughout. But the whole thing is based off of the idea of one of those classic drawing room mysteries where you've got you're in that ancient English drawing room where there's all the suspects and the detective, and he's going to lay out the case and tell you which one of these people is the murderer. And meanwhile, behind the scenes, Adrian Brody is this Bulgarian American director who wants to make a movie of the play, but he wants to do it his way with the big shootouts and chase scenes. And David Oyelowo is the screenwriter who is being forced to work with this guy who thinks he's an asshole because it's fucking Agatha Christie. Like, why would we need to add a shootout and a chase and an explosion to this? Like, it's Agatha Christie, asshole. And so they battle back and forth in a very funny way in some of the flashback scenes that we see. One of the characters, Reese Shearsmith, who I believe is from the recent Kingsman movie, he plays Sir Richard Attenborough, who actually did play the actual character on the West End in London. And that's this. It's not based on a true story, but he actually did play that character on the West End in London. So again, the meta is very heavy here. There's so many great performances in this. Just everybody is just having such a fantastic time in this movie, and I had a great time with this movie. It's a lot of fun.
Wow, you haven't disliked anything this week. That's
awesome. There's one coming. Don't worry.
I hope it's not this one. Clerks 3.
It's definitely not this one. Clerks 3, of course, the continuation of Kevin Smith's Clerks universe, picks up with Randall and Dante having now bought and running the stores. They've got Jay and Silent Bob as their partners who work next door, but still sell weed illegally up front because it's Jay and Silent Bob. And yeah, so the story goes here that Randall has a massive heart attack, not unlike Kevin Smith had, what they call the Widowmaker, which you tend not to survive, and he manages to survive it, and that sets him on a path to want to make a movie, and he decides he's going to make Clerks. And he and Dante are going to clash because he's treating this like it's actually his story, even though most of the story is Dante's story. Just wonderful callbacks throughout to, bad customers, and of course the return of old characters from Clerks that are just fantastic. And Veronica coming back was just one of my favorite moments ever. This movie is just absolutely wonderful, but on top of just being typically funny in the way that Kevin Smith is funny, he's also having a very mature conversation about male friendship and about love and about death. And it does get a little heavy at a particular point that kind of does take you back a bit. My sister, who's also a huge Kevin Smith fan, has watched all these movies with me. When she saw it, she was like, I'm not sure I like it. I'm not
really?
Sure. Yeah, because she didn't like the way it ended. She didn't like the ending. And I thought it was bold. I thought it was surprising, exciting, and very funny. And I thought it was very mature, but mature in the way that Kevin Smith is mature, where he's still Kevin Smith, but he's a more thoughtful Kevin Smith. He's got a lot on his mind now, and he can still make jokes, but he can also say, there's some seriousness to life that sometimes gets in the way of the jokes.
Yeah, for me, it was, it was very started to be typical Kevin Smith lately, and that, which I love because I'm a fan, but I definitely know he's only playing to like you and me and a few other people.
Yeah.
There's a whole montage of them casting for the movie where he's just like, look at who my friends are, which he does. He's been doing in a lot of movies lately, and he really, since Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, and which again I like it because I'm a fan of all that, but I know it's just very much a uniquely Kevin Smith thing. But similar to Clerks 2, you get to that 60% of the way through, 70% of the way through, and all of a sudden it's just like it starts to get heavy. And they go off to the friendship thing. Only, it starts out when they're in their 20s, and then they go to the 30s, and they're skipping to their 50s. And that heaviness he does so well. Like it just brought me back to reality. Like, okay, this is a real movie. This isn't just Jay and Silent Bob reboot, which was a movie of nothing but all that, which was fun and fine. Mm-hmm. But this got really, really deep and good, and I was just floored. I loved where it went, and I was just like, this is really, really good. I didn't see it coming. I probably should have saw it coming, but I was so caught up in it. I was just like, I really enjoyed where they went with this, and then listening to his podcast, and because he does a million interviews. He does all these stand-up shows. It's hard to not really know Kevin Smith in some ways. I mean, he never stops telling you about himself. Mm-hmm. It makes you start to wonder where that part came from. Who was he thinking about? Which part was him? Which part was somebody else? Who was it? Somebody else? And that made it for another fascinating a fascinating thing. And then even Elias, I was worried he wasn't going to be as funny as he was in Clerks 2. But they definitely use him well, and they bring on his daughter's real life fiance or whatever to play as his little silent Bob, which I thought was pretty cute. And basically, if you've seen Clerks 2, you know Elias is a super Christian, and here he prays for Randall to have a heart attack, or something to happen to Randall, and Randall has a heart attack. So then he turns his back on God and goes full blown Satan worshiper, which. I mean, even going into the RST video and having the videos on the shelves, them not knowing it was the video store. I don't know.
Such great gags, just so funny.
But what I almost love the most is just the fact that they were in the convenience store the whole time again. And you got to really see it and feel it again. It just felt like home in a way watching the movie. Just very comfortable. Until he made it uncomfortable, which I just thought was really quite brilliant, which he doesn't have to be anymore. He has his audience he can do, and he can keep doing the reboot thing, and making that movie all day long if he wants.
He can serve up greatest hits all day and we'd be very happy, but he challenged himself here and went to a place that I'm sure people probably didn't expect. And like my sister, her reaction was very visceral. She's just not even sure to the point where she's not sure where she stands in the movie. And that it's that level of bold and heavy and, but also still very, very funny. Like still very, very funny and moving and romantic, even with Rosario Dawson and the way he uses her throughout.
Oh yeah.
She's so good. She just gets the Kevin Smith vibe. She just rolls right into it and is just lights out from minute one. She's just awesome. Absolutely. I really early on finding out, about her character, I was kind of taken aback. Like that actually got me a little bit like, what?
Yeah.
and then that the way they weaved her back in there was so great. It was just so smart. And
my initial thought was, oh, she wasn't available for the movie, so we had to do this with her. But no, he had a plan for it. And just really, really well done. And I think you're right though. When Veronica comes back, the whole he's in it the perfect amount, and it's great. Everything they do with her is great. I don't think we've really seen her in a Kevin Smith movie since.
No, I don't think so.
Clerks. And she was one of the best parts about Clerks. So it was really cool to see her back, and what they do with her is fantastic. And
I did want to know what happened to Caitlin Bree, but that's fine. Well, you can't answer everything.
Well, I mean, the actress passed away.
Oh God, I didn't. Oh my God, I had no idea.
Oh, you didn't know that?
No, I didn't know that. Oh man.
At the end of the credits, the very end,
the
very end, it says, says for her, I don't remember what the actress's name was, and then we miss you or whatever. So that was really that. I might stay for the whole credits just to see if they were going to do anything for her, and they did.
Oh wow, yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah, she had some weird illness, so she couldn't come back. But yeah, I'm sure if she was alive, they would have done something with her. But I think for a while she was married to Jeff Anderson, who played Randall in real life. But anyway, it was, I don't know. It's service. It's fan service, more or less. It's similar to Pearl. He's only going for the select audience. He's not bringing in people who are curious. And then he knows that. That's fine. And I can't wait to go see it again in November if you're still available.
Oh yeah, definitely.
That should be
I may have already seen it 3 times, but I'm ready to see it again.
There's not a Kevin Smith movie I haven't seen multiple times. I've seen Yoga Hoses probably as many times as I've seen Mallrats, maybe even more. But I also Mallrats is the one I've seen the least.
Really? I just watched Mallrats the other day.
It was my brother's movie. I was already I didn't know. I don't know. I was almost straight to Chasing Amy, then backwards to Clerks. I'm
We
pissed that Harvey Weinstein has Dogma, so we can never see it again.
that's garbage. Yeah. We got a shout out in this movie.
Yes, Jeff Anderson names our podcast in the movie. Woke me right up, and
Oh, so cool. And I saw this before you, and I was just so excited to see you to find out when you heard it. Yeah, he just goes, everyone's a critic. And considering Kevin Smith hates critics, it's like he's already watched her. He's like he's been a listener forever.
Right. Well, I remember when we saw Yoga Hosers, Ralph Garman's character, the bad guy at the end, he flirts around. I think we were I Hate Critics at the time. He flirts around with, he's about to say I hate critics, and he never said it. And then to have him actually have Jeff Anderson actually say it in this Randall, it was pretty, it definitely woke, I mean, I wasn't sleeping, but I definitely popped up in my chair and I was like, hey. And then I worried, like, is that all Sean thought was waiting for me to hear? Does this fall apart? And then it went to the other direction. I'm like, and it just kind of, that thought left my head, and I just got caught up in where Kevin Smith, what he wanted to say with it, and I was just blown away and absolutely loved where they went. And I'm so glad he made this movie.
Yeah, and the natural qualities of Jeff Anderson and Brian O'Halloran, they're not actors. You know, they don't do a lot of acting. Halloran does a lot more than obviously Jeff does, but they have a natural quality, and their chemistry is just amazing together. Like they just have this perfect friendly chemistry to where they just fall right back into their rhythm so beautifully. And you don't need to be actors when you have that natural, that realistic chemistry that they have. And but that's some amazing acting from Jeff Anderson late in the movie. Like I was genuinely like moved.
Absolutely. But he does in Clerks too. I mean, it's very similar arc. I guess it does go different places, but it was just, and this movie like breaks the fourth wall. I mean, they clearly just throw scenes in there that don't add to the story, but you just go, oh, that's fun. Like when they're reenacting some of the Clerks scenes, and the one where Jeff Anderson had the raccoon eyes. They just did it, and it doesn't add anything to the movie, but it's just everybody who's a fan of Clerks is going to see that and laugh, because not only do we remember the movie, we know all the stories, we've seen the commentaries a million times. Everybody knows everything about these movies that is going to see this movie.
Yeah,
and Kevin Smith knows that, and he throws us little bones and Easter eggs that would stall most movies, but because he knows the movie, the universe he's in, it works, and it. I can't tell my friends who aren't Kevin Smith fans to go watch this movie and be like, you're going to love it, because they're probably not, because they're going to miss a lot. But it is, for the audience that he was going for, he knocks it out of the park, and he tried. It wasn't just a money grab at all. So
I can't say this. I showed this to a Gen Zer, all three movies. I showed her this one and Clerks 2 and the original in order. And if you watch them all, you do come away at the end going, wow, yeah, I love this.
I agree. I can see that.
And they loved it. So
I could definitely see doing that. But that's awesome. I do think you can still become a Kevin Smith fan. Because movies are kind of timeless in a lot of ways. Some jokes don't land as well anymore, but still, it's the characters being immature and from the 90s more so than the jokes themselves. So that's why
that's the line that Kevin Smith has always been right on, and like the whole Chase a Gamey conversation about whether or not it was homophobic, and the characters had a lot of growing up to do. They were young characters who were very misinformed, and part of their journey is learning to be less, be more open and less that way, and to grow up. They weren't grown up, so that was the whole point of it. They weren't fully formed human beings. People were not fair to that movie by calling that movie homophobic, because it's about people learning, like I did. Because I'm very sure there's a child of the 80s and early 90s, I was probably, would be considered today homophobic. I was probably, I think I was pretty mean to this gay kid that I went to school with when I was like 12 or 13 and 14, and he was like a year behind me in school. And it was, very common to be cruel to people like that at that time. And I don't know if I was necessarily cruel. I wasn't a typical bully, but I certainly followed the crowd and didn't do anything to stop it. But I learned over time, and I got older and more mature, came to realize that's the wrong way to be. And I've, learned empathy, and I learned to be a better person. And that came about, in my early 20s into my 30s. That it was a full thing now, to the point where I would consider myself a very strong ally of the LGBTQ community. And it's something you have to give characters the room to be bad people who grow into better people. And that was the whole thing with Chasing Amy. Kevin was telling a story about a group of very stunted individuals who were becoming slightly less stunted by the end, including the supposed lesbian character, who again is another person. People say, well, he can, she's not, she's a terrible representation because she's a lesbian who sleeps with a man. She didn't know who she was. And every gay person will tell you about the time in their life when they didn't know really who they were yet, and learned who they were through, various different experiences.
Well, hell, a lot of straight people, you talk about the college experience where they don't know who they are and they're trying to figure it out.
It's all about, and that's been the journey of Clerks in so many ways, is these characters growing up, and Randall going very slowly towards growing up, but actually having sometimes the more mature perspective of being the guy who is so comfortable being a friend to another person. That's what Randall is so amazing to me, is that he's so comfortable being a friend to Dante. As antagonistic as he can be, as much of a dick as he can be, he is Dante's friend first and foremost. From the moment in Clerks when he tells Caitlin, you hurt him this time, I'll kill you, to Clerks 2, where he's trying to get through to Dante how much he cares about him and how much their friendship means to him, to this movie where all of that builds to what happens in this movie to make it so incredibly emotional and spectacular. And yeah, the whole of Clerks and the whole of Kevin Smith's work is about people who are stunted learning to become better slowly. And you've got to be open to the idea that life teaches you things. And this reductive idea of, well, all characters must be good all the time. That's not an arc. That's not a dramatic arc. You can't start good and end good.
So many movies fail to accomplish that. That's the other thing, is if Chasing Amy wasn't as good as it was, it doesn't get, it earned the ability to allow the characters to grow. And you could argue all day long that Kevin James or Adam Sandler or whoever these other guys who try to possibly do that or not, the movie sucks so bad that whether there's growth or not, you haven't earned it. So you don't get to claim that in your offensive movies. Yeah. But that's what makes one of the many things that make Kevin Smith so amazing as a filmmaker. And I don't know. Have you ever seen him live?
No,
before?
Never.
I think he's doing a Q&A when we go, so it should be
good.
It should be a good time.
That's very exciting. Yeah, I've never seen him. I've only seen the recordings of him doing live stuff. So I was writing about it when I wrote about this movie. I was talking about how I can't be objective about Kevin Smith, and I really can't. I'm going to like what he does because like you said, from the podcast to the TV shows to the commentary tracks and then the movies themselves, like Kevin Smith, it's a parasocial relationship, but he's like he's like my friend. I feel like I know Kevin Smith. I feel like he is a friend that I've known my entire life for the past 25 30 years almost. And I can't be objective. I can rib him maybe, like Red State, yeah, but like, what was that about? But I still like Red State.
Right.
I still like the ideas of Red State. I still want to have the Red State conversation. Like I can't be objective because I like him so much. I'm going to try to like whatever he does. And so I put that out there, like, this is not an objective review. I love this movie because I love Kevin Smith. He's like a friend to me. Whether he obviously doesn't know that, but I don't care.
But he makes himself appear attainable from having the message boards back in the day to, I mean, a lot of his friends are friends today because they were just fans to begin with. The Impractical Jokers are in this movie, and the part of where they even got their start is by through the Kevin Smith message boards, Brian Quinn ended up working for Kevin Smith. He's in Dogma. He's in the background of certain things, and started working for View Askew. Got his feet wet, started to get connections. Went and became a firefighter. Then came back, and they all ended up being almost probably more famous than Kevin Smith now, or at least in the ballpark. But it's all of his. Even his friends from high school are in this movie. They were in Clerks. They have their own podcast, which I actually prefer to all Kevin Smith's podcasts, but they're all in this giant world. Probably my favorite thing in the whole world is the podcast Tell 'em Steve Dave. If that's anything I was ever going to collect or be a completist on, it's that more than anything else. And all because they're Kevin Smith's friends. So he makes it seem attainable, which, it's like, and part of me is like, what do we wear to the show? Do I wear the Batman versus Jesus shirt and hopefully he sees it? Or my wife hasn't taken me to the Goodwill yet. So I don't know. I could talk about, we've done the Kevin Smith episode a couple different times. Whenever we get a chance, we try to do it.
Yeah.
He's one of my favorite, but he's also, you almost got to take him out of the discussion and put him off to the side because he's just his own thing. I can't be objective either. I like certain things better than others, but I just think he knows what he's doing and who he's doing it for all times. And that plays, and he also knows the money he has. Even the Red State conversation, the movie he wrote and the movie he made are two different movies due to budgetary cuts. And we know that because of the podcast, and therefore it's just like, oh, okay. And then he sits there and he dissects the movie with you, and so you know his motivations, everything about him, which then allows you to just enjoy it and not. He does a good job of taking your critical eye away and making you just be a fan. And at the same time, that pisses a lot of people off, and they just hate him. But to everybody else, it works, and I adore everything he does. It's also great to see Jason Mewes sober with new teeth. Ever since his meth teeth from like Zach and Mary, it always was hard for me to watch it. I always felt bad for him, but now he's got his teeth all fixed up. He's fun in this. He's clearly having a good time. He's not owning the movies like he used to back in
right.
But it's still
such a great guy. He's like, when he's gonna do the dance and he makes everybody leave,
just like they did in the original.
Such a great bit.
Well, they're all in their 50s doing these roles, except for I think Mewes is in his 40s still. But it just even I feel like just about every character from Clerks that's alive comes back and does their part again. Even the little kid who smoked came back as an adult and redid that scene, and it was fun. It was just fun, and
I can't wait to see it again.
He's comfort food, man.
Yeah,
I don't know what to say. Oh, they can bring the Donkey Show back, sort of. Anyway.
Oh, but they make it poignant. They make the Donkey Show fucking poignant. God damn it!
Nobody can do that. We're praising Ari Aster and Ty West and all that. They can't do that.
Yeah.
Even as like subtle digs at Martin Scorsese in the movie, and it's all in good fun, but I don't know. I
love it.
All right, do we end it here?
It'd probably be a much happier show, I guess.
I think Cameron Crowe can come around in the end, but John Hamm made a Fletch movie.
Yeah, and he shouldn't have. John Hamm stars as Fletch in Confess Fletch, and this is it's a Fletch mystery. He's not a reporter anymore in this version. He's just a guy. I guess he's an investigator on behalf of his Italian rich girlfriend. He's going to Boston to search for some missing paintings. He ends up arriving and finding a woman who was murdered, and he just could not care less. He's accused of the murder. That's the title, Confess Fletch. And a couple of cops want him to just simply confess. They say he did it. He didn't do it, obviously. But he's being framed for it so they can cover up something else. The thing about this movie, and the thing why this doesn't work, is that John Hamm, for as funny as he can be, he's funny when directed. Like when you watch him on 30 Rock, he's very funny at 30 Rock because he's being directed by Tina Fey and that crew, giving him funny jokes to do. The same goes for Bridesmaids. He's funny in Bridesmaids because Kristen Wiig and the director are like, John, do this and be funny. When Greg Mottola is basically telling John Hamm to try and find the joke the way Chevy Chase finds the joke in Fletch, he's just kind of feeling around in the dark. He doesn't have the instinct to know where to enter a joke. Like one of the things he does is that I guess he thinks is funny is take off his shoes in inappropriate places. It's not particularly funny. He just doesn't have that ability, and so much of the movie is just sort of a flat line throughout, where just like it's kind of vaguely amusing, but nothing is very funny. They also don't make it so that anybody else is funny, because I guess they don't want to point out just how not funny he is. And so you do get a character played by Annie Mumolo who's just constantly doing bit after bit after bit that isn't funny, but it's also exposing how unfunny the rest of the movie is. Kyle MacLachlan, weirdly enough, is very funny because for some reason, I don't know, they decided that his character, who is ostensibly the villain of the movie, loves EDM music. And Kyle MacLachlan dancing to EDM music is legit funny. That's just a funny idea. Like, that's the one funny idea in the entire movie. To magnify how unfunny and poorly planned this movie is, they hired comedian Eugene Merman for a character in this movie. He plays a security guard, and they never have him interact with Fletch, not one time. And they also never have him say anything funny or do anything funny. So I don't know why you hired one of the funniest human beings on the planet to not do anything. I imagine they probably had scenes between him and John Hamm, and it was just Eugene being very funny and pointing out how John Hamm's not funny, and they had to cut him because it was just magnifying further how unfunny John Hamm is.
Yeah, I didn't watch it. Back to Kevin Smith. He was going to make a Fletch movie once with Jason Lee, and
I imagine that could work. Jason Lee's a guy who can find a joke.
Well, and what Kevin Smith directed him, you know. I think he was going to have Chevy Chase in it as well, but he had that interaction and was like, oh, that sucks. One of my heroes is an asshole. But this movie has been passed around for decades, or maybe not this, some version of a new Fletch. Ryan Reynolds, they wanted him to do it once, and he was like, I did Van Wilder, I don't need to do Fletch. I don't get why this was needed, in general. I mean, we can talk about Fletch too, if you're ready. That is a classic, but
I don't know why Greg Mottola directed it. He's not a bad director. No. Greg Mottola's directed some pretty terrific movies, but he's not a guy. He's not a guy who goes for like big, broad gags, which again is not what the Fletch books are. I understand. I don't know much about the Fletch books. So apparently they're not what Chevy Chase made them out to be, which is like him doing a series of bits. The original Fletch is Chevy Chase, who plays a reporter who's investigating the drug trade, and also finds himself in this weird plot where Tim Matheson hires him, thinking he's a drug addict on the beach. He hires him to kill him. Tim Matheson wants Chevy Chase to kill him, and this piques Fletch's interest. So he wants to know why. What's up with this guy who wants me to kill him? That's kind of odd. So he begins to investigate that, and those two cases and eventually dovetail together. But much of the movie is all about him just coming up with these various different identities to play. And they basically just set up a series of scenarios for Chevy to just sort of enter into and then find the joke. Like he just reaches around and he'll just find something funny to say. And because he is a naturally funny guy, he manages to get a few of those. Like he does find several very good jokes that are just undeniably funny because he's a funny guy. I don't like Fletch. I don't like Chevy Chase as a person. I think that really affects my watching this movie because I mean, all the terrible interactions that he's had with people I like over the years. It's just not good. So I find it hard to like him in any way. And so that does taint this, but he does find like if you're going to do a movie, and again, I think Confess Fletch is the same kind of movie. They set up a lot of scenarios for Fletch to then go search for something funny to do in them. John Hamm doesn't have those kind of instincts. Chevy Chase does. Chevy Chase can find the joke. And I think he does enough to, that this isn't a miserable movie to watch, but I don't like it.
Yeah, it was just so much of what ruins this movie for me is just the kind of counter that's come after it that he probably inspired in some ways. But I mean, Ryan Reynolds is a perfect example. Ryan Reynolds does this better than Chevy Chase does. That said, there are times when I'm just sick of Ryan Reynolds doing it.
Yeah.
So
I've been saying that a little bit lately.
So it's hard to go back and give this the credit it probably deserves, because it did come before Ryan Reynolds came. But I also, I'd rather watch Airplane and Hot Shots.
Mm-hmm.
Where it goes full blown parody versus this kind of middle with what Fletch is doing, trying to be in just a real comedy with these bits versus a parody movie going full on, parody. I don't know. It's hard for me to, similar to what we said about Kevin Smith, hard for me to watch this, with constructively, just because of everything that I've been exposed to. My opinion of Chevy Chase based on what other celebrities I like have said.
Yeah.
And stuff what's coming after it. It's not good enough, especially, the vacation movies don't live up like I remember them to. I know you hate them even more than most do. But
much like your reaction to Star Wars, it's probably the people who like those movies and the way they like them that I don't like as much as I don't like the movie. I don't like the movies, but the people who talk about them and those people who like gleefully say shitter's full to me, like I'm going to laugh at that. I don't find that funny. That's not funny to me. I don't know why you find that funny.
And having to go into a Walgreens or whatever every year on Christmas and see the memorabilia, the stupid moose mug or whatever that was. God.
Yeah,
I totally
it's insufferable.
Get it.
It's insufferable. It is.
I mean, I'm not. It's not a movie I need to watch every Christmas. If it's on, I might. I kind of get bored by it. Some of the jokes are lame. I'll take Scrooge every year for
absolutely. I'm prepping a big. See. I'm prepping a big piece on Scrooge about how much I love Scrooge, and that'll be out in November in time for the holidays. Because I've been rethinking that movie and thinking of it perhaps as, other than Lost in Translation, my favorite Bill Murray movie.
Which I see all the flaws in it, but he's so fun that
he's so good.
It's probably the most watchable thing he's ever done. And everybody would disagree. It's like Ghostbusters, but I don't give a fuck. I'm with you 100%. Yeah, I mean, and I probably need to start doing what your cousin Jeff does, and maybe bring Black Christmas or something like that. A reason to watch something else besides Scrooge, because I don't dislike Christmas Vacation like you do, but I definitely don't love it like everybody else does.
I loathe it. I loathe it.
But I don't blame you at all.
I loathe Wally World. It's the only movie I've ever hated John Candy.
The big movie in 1992 was, I'm sorry, not Captain Ron. There's my Chevy Chase joke. More like my John Hamm joke that only the YouTube people saw. But Cameron Crowe's Singles
is just an absolutely wonderful film, a romantic movie. One of the first movies I watched where I finally kind of got romance. Like, it made sense to me for the first time. Like, because I'd seen all those old movies with, the older romantic movies that my mom loved, and I could appreciate them kind of, but I was bored by them. This one spoke to me because these are my people in my generation and my music. And grunge was my thing, and it just spoke to me. And that line in the movie, like, I was nowhere near your neighborhood, like that clicked with me so hard. And just how clever and romantic that line is, just it's stuck with me now for 30 years, just how much I adore that. And it's just such a classically Cameron Crowe thing to say. But really, as much as I love like Kira Sedgwick and Campbell Scott out front, I think the real, like, the through line, the romance that's really burgeoning throughout, and the one that's really teaching you something, is Bridget Fonda and Matt Dillon, that's growing in the background of this movie behind Kira Sedgwick and Campbell Scott. It's so brilliant, just the little tiny touches, and her becoming a fully fledged person and standing up for herself, and giving up on him, and him realizing that she's given up on him, and coming back around, and then sharing a moment in the elevator at the end with this just little piece of growth of him that's just lovely. It's so clever and so well put together, and everything just has something to tell you. It has a little something funny or observant or romantic to tell you. On top of it, just the soundtrack is just unbelievably great. So, I mean, those Paul Westerberg songs have stuck with me for 30 years, and then of course all the grunge stuff that I still love today. I mean, I adore this film. I did, in my review, and I know a lot of people get very uncomfortable about this, I said that I don't find this movie to be one I could consider iconic, because I feel like it is movie so white. Like, this is an incredibly white movie. No, that's not Cameron Crowe's intention or his fault. He's not a racist. The grunge scene itself was an incredibly white scene. He's reflecting what was in front of him. That's really what it is. It wasn't about excluding anybody intentionally. But it's an incredibly white movie. There's no doubting. There's no other way to put it. And I did mention that. And I know a lot of people were upset by that. And I don't care if you're triggered by that. It's true.
Well, there's been a couple times this year. I think when we saw Men, I kind of mentioned, as great as a movie as it is, I feel like it's a woman's story to tell. It would have been better if it was. And it doesn't make it not good. It's just, there was another movie later on that I kind of the same. I didn't bring it up on the podcast, but it's just, I don't know, maybe we see so many movies, we also see what's going on in our culture around us. It's hard not to notice things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you too. I am impressed though at the same time that Cameron Crowe could make this movie, because he's more of a child of the 70s, making a very 90s movie, in the early 90s, no less. But he is from Seattle, and he was friends with these guys. Pearl Jam is in the movie. Allison Chance is in the movie. Kevin Dillon's older brother. Call back to last episode. I like it quite a bit. I think it's a great step for Cameron Crowe on his way to almost famous.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, it really is quite good. Also, what came out this week was Husbands and Wives, Peter's Friends, Serafina, School Ties, and South Central.
It's very funny, Husbands and Wives turning 30 this week, and Woody Allen announcing his retirement. Woody Allen has said that he's retiring from movies, and it's and so people on Twitter were very, very quick to point out, you're not retiring, just nobody's going to give you money to make movies anymore.
Right. Like a reason for retiring is, well, the movies come out, they're in the Cineplex for 2 weeks, and they go to streaming. That's why I'm done. Yeah, that's why.
Right. That's why. It's not that you can't raise any money anymore.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, next week I won't be here because I'm going to see Alice in Chains. Nice. And Nine Inch Nails, and it'll be a fun weekend of bands I haven't seen before. But we have Don't Worry Darling, Moon Age Daydream, and Avatar's coming back. Is that going to be your classic next week?
We'll see. I've got to recruit maybe Amy and Jeff and see, or Zach, and see if they're what they're up to, and they want to jump in on that or The Man Who Fell to Earth.
All right.
I've seen Moon Age Daydream, and oh my god,
awesome. 92 Last Mohicans, Mr. Saturday Night, and Innocent Blood. Blonde also is coming out on Netflix. Sean's already seen it. We might save that for another week just to see how I feel about it. But yeah, and I'm definitely curious about Don't Worry, Darling. It looks so good. They spent so much money on marketing,
Hmm.
but everything around it is just so like. Who would have thought Shia LaBeouf would have been like the good guy and Olivia Wilde would be the bad guy? Especially after what Jason Sudeikis did earlier in this year. I mean, this whole thing is so fascinating. And
Yeah, it's
all I
weird.
care about is Florence Pugh, though. So
Hmm.
she's the reason I want to see this movie. She looks fantastic in it. The reviews I've read has been nothing but kind to her. I think she is amazing, and uh, I hope it gives her. I hope it does her justice. All right. Anything else before Flick Chart?
Nothing really. I'm gonna have to keep Flickchart a little short because it's
Oh
very
yeah,
very hot in my office.
mine too. Polar Express, I heard too.
Uh, shit. They both suck. Die Hard 2. No, do I like Polar Express? I can't remember if I like Polar Express or not. No, I don't like it.
Josh used to shit all over it, and we just kind of always went with him. I don't really have an opinion.
Yeah, I don't really remember now. I think I've said it. I said it before, and I was very vociferous about it. Now I don't even remember what I said.
I used to hate Die Hard 2 when we watched it again. I think we like swapped. You were like, Die Hard 2 is great. And then you're like, this
Yeah.
sucks. And I was like, this isn't as bad as I remembered.
When it turned 30, yeah, I watched it. It was like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah,
why is William Sadler naked now? What the fuck?
I'm all about that. Star Trek V, Adventures of Robin Hood, 1934.
Adventures of Robin Hood.
Yeah. Hook, Heaven's Heart. What is Heaven's Heart?
I have no idea.
Oh,
I can't see your screen, so I don't know what you're looking at.
Sorry. I didn't share it. It doesn't matter. We'll just have this
Yeah.
quickly. Hook, Bowfinger.
Bowfinger.
Coco, Orange County.
I have a real soft spot for Orange County. I really do.
I know.
Mm,
St. Tenacious D, they're going to be at the festival too.
nice. I think I would probably watch Orange County again. Not that I don't appreciate Coco, but it's not a movie I'm going to ever watch again.
I'm with you at the same time. Just the fact that it's a very white movie, I'm going to feel bad about it. I'm not even trying to be funny, but that's true. Dude, Where's My Car? The Rookie.
Which the Rookie?
2002. Looks like the baseball one.
The baseball one? Yeah, it's Dude, Where's My Car? It was going to be Dude, Where's My Car either way, but I wanted to be sure which one I was dismissing.
United 93 epic movie.
Fuck.
Just
I would rather re-experience 9/11 than watch epic movie.
Podcast is over. All right, have fun next week. I'll be back in a couple.
All
See
right.
everybody.